and communicare. So it is to share something. So whatever a person, he or she shares to the another person. So it could be a message. That message can be an idea, thoughts, information, emotion, anything. Whenever any two person interacts, that is called as a communication. For a communication, basically, a sender and a receiver is required. So when a sender is someone who initiates a message and the receiver who receives the message, so any information, it is being transferred or interchanged between two people, a sender and a receiver, is called communication. So here, a sender is a person who initiates a message and a process is being, and the thoughts are being transferred. It is encoded as a message, and then that message is being received by the receiver. And a person who receives the message is called a receiver, and that is being decoded by the receiver. So here, in technical terms, it has been given. So for your understanding, I will tell you an example. So since it is an evening time, so if you are feeling like having a message, and you people who are listening to my message are called receivers. And in my mind, I'm thinking how to make you understand all these elements of communication. So that thought is being converted as a message, and I'm communicating it with you. So that process of converting a thought into a message is called as encoding. So this encoding, it can be done by a sender, and a message is being transformed, and that message can be sent through a channel. So can anyone tell with which channel now we are communicating? Can someone tell me?
Google Meet.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you. Very good. So that is a channel. So for any communication, we need a channel to transfer the communication. So that channels could be a phone call, email, text. Yeah, that channel could be even a face-to-face meet, and any other communication tools it could be there. So that channel is also required, and then a receiver will decode the message. Decoding is opposite to encoding. Here, thoughts are being converted into message. Again, when it is decoded, those messages are being converted into one thoughts. So that is what decoding. So now I am communicating, and you people are receiving the message, and in your mind you will be introspecting those messages, informations, right? So you will take it to your understanding. So that is called decoding. So it will differ to person. So according how you are taking and processing it in your mind is called decoding. So this is what the entire process, it happens in a communication, and this can be interrupted by the noise. Next slide, sir. So here it is being disturbed by something. So whenever a disturbance occurs, the effective communication will be disturbed. So here the levels of noises are segregated into 4 levels. It could be A, B, C, and D. The first one is semantic noise. Can anyone say what is semantic noise? So do you have any idea about this? So is it new? Can
semantic symbols.
Yeah, no. Any other guesses? Yeah, okay. Let me tell. Semantic is nothing but anything which is difficult for a word or something which is difficult for the receiver to understand.
Language.
So whenever some words, it is ambiguity of words. Ambiguity of words in essence. Yeah, its meaning. Yeah, yes, sir. So when a word has multiple meanings, so sometimes a word will have multiple meanings, right? So that it's not pronunciation. It is a word with multiple meaning. So if a person is having different, if a word, it has a different meaning, sometimes the sender will tell it in one aspect and the receiver will receive it in the other aspect. So that can be a problem. So this can be the words used in the locality. So there will be difference of words in
grapevine.
Yeah. So that kind of words can interrupt a communication, so that the message what a sender wants to communicate will not be understood by the receiver. So that could be the noise. It is semantic noise. And source noise. If a resource person or a sender if they have some speech issues, if they are stammering or mumbling, so it will be hard for the receiver to understand. So that is the source noise. So we have seen about semantic noise and source noise. And then, yeah, okay, I'll give you an example. So, okay, here, take this word as an example. So when the meaning of a message gets distorted due to an ambiguity in word, it is given. So do you, how many of you know the meaning of ambiguity? So can you tell me what is ambiguity?
Doubtful.
Okay, then unclear, unclear, not clear. So, okay, I will tell you. So words under many more than one way. So words which has a meaning, yeah, it is confused, double meaning. No, yeah, it is double meaning, right? So whenever a word which has double meaning, or word whenever a person use an harder vocabulary. So if I am expertise in some field, I'm using a technical word, and I'm that cannot be understood by a common man, right? So that kind of thing. So if I'm using some technical words, and if I'm speaking to a common man, will he be able to understand the word? So suppose if I'm using ambiguity in the words, and many of the people will have their own understanding about the word, so it will not be clear. So word which should be used in the communication should be very, very simple. Whenever an ambiguity of word, ambiguity in the sense, it is a word with multiple meaning. So more than one meaning. For example, you take a blue color. So blue color in a sense, it is just a color, and also it indicates some emotions, right? Feeling sad, likewise. So whenever I'm using, I feel blue. If I am telling you I'm feeling blue in a sense, people will not understand what do you mean by blue. Actually, blue means feeling sad. So can you get me? I'm feeling blue in a sense. I'm feeling sad, but many of us will not be able to understand. So that kind of sentence, many of us will not be able to understand. So for that kind of words will be an barrier for an effective communication. So whatever I am telling, the receiver will not be able to understand. So that is what semantic noise. So any word with multiple meaning should not be used, and any word, any vocabulary, idioms, likewise also. So like if all those words are used in a communication, so in a classroom, if we use all those words, the students will understand. They will not be understanding the concept what we are trying to tell. So that is called semantic noise. And then source noise is something where the speech issues occurs. So it is mumbling and stammering. So did you understand the semantic noise? Can I proceed? Is it clear?
Shall I say the example case for a patient? It is a case for a lawyer. Also, it is a case. Is it okay?
Yeah. Yeah, it is correct. So likewise, if you are using all those words, it is an noise in the communication. And then source noise you have seen, and channel noise. So now we are using Google Meet. So if you have some other issues in your network, so the communication will be affected, right? So if a cable network or a broadcast media, if there is some issues in the quality or some interruption occurs, then the effective communication will not take place. So that is a noise. And then psychological noise. So it is preconceived notation. So if somebody is having some preconceived thoughts about other person, uh, if somebody is having an preconceived notation, if suppose if I'm having an preconceived thought about another person, if I'm communicating with them, then I will have that thought in my mind and I'll communicate with them. So that in that time, whatever I thought to speak will not be effective. So because that thought will always interrupt in my communication. That is what psychological noise is. So we'll see the psychological noise in deep in the other slides. And next one. So is it clear about the noise level? Yeah. And then 7 C's of effective communication. Excuse me, sir. 7 C's of communication. Yeah, 7 C's of effective communication. Whenever a communication must be effective, these 7 C's must be taken care by the speaker. So by the person who sends a message. So the message should be clear. So whatever I'm trying to tell, it must be very, very clear and it must be very concise. If I'm speaking for pages and pages, people will be bored. They will not listen. So it must be as concise as possible. So very few, the least words of selection of words must be done for an effective communication. And the concrete, it should be specific. So it should be to the point. Whenever we are speaking, it should be very clear and concise, and it should be to the point, concrete and correct. So I don't think, Divya, can you mute your mic? Yeah. And correct in a sense, if suppose I'm speaking something to an, if I'm discussing about communication to the people who are studying for UGC NET, and if I'm going and teaching this to an TRB aspirant or TNPSC aspirant, it will not be relevant. So they will study some other syllabus. So likewise, to whom what we have to speak, we must know. So we must choose the audience and we must choose the appropriate message what we are trying to tell to that receiver. So it must be correct message to the correct audience and coherent. So whenever a conversation is being and communication is happening, the messages what we have to tell, it should be in coherent way. It should be in logical order. So it cannot be a random communication. So from the initial information and the final information, in between information, we can't tell it in random way. So it should be in a coherent way, and then information, it should be complete. So for example, if so we are arranging this class, right? So if the sir has not informed you the full information, that is in which platform, at what time, who is the resource person, and what topic we are going to discuss. If some of this information is lacking, you will be under confusion, right? So if suppose the topic or the unit is not being discussed or informed to you, then you will not have any idea. So what we are going to see today. So that will affect the people, that will affect the communication what we are trying to tell. So that to avoid that, any communication, it must be a complete. So whatever we are trying to tell, all the facts required for that communication should be conveyed. And courteous. Courteous, it should be commitment and with affection. It should be polite, and we must, whenever we communicate, we can't communicate as an aggressive person, or an authoritative communication will not always work. Sometimes it could work. So likewise, for any communication, so we need all these 7 C's like clear, conscious, concrete, correct, coherent, and complete, and courteous. So remember all these 7 C's, and question can be asked from this. This is very, very important. And then 4 S's of effective communication. It is strength, shortness, simplicity, and sincerity. As you have seen before, it should be very short. It should be very concise, and simplicity. And as you have seen the semantic noise, no? So the words what we are choosing, it should be very, very simple. When we are using in complicated words or vocabularies or ambiguity words, so the communication, it will be affected. Every people will not be able to understand. And then strength. So for any information we are going to transfer, it must be given, the strength should be given by the sender to make the information be received as effective as possible. And then sincerity. So whenever a person or a sender is communicating, he or she must be sincere enough to tell the complete information. And then next slide, sir. And then skills required. And here communication, it is about it is linked with the language. So communication, it is through a language, right? So language is required. For any communication, we'll always have this LSRW. It is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So whenever a person is good at listening, so see this graph, listening will have 45% of the skill is, whenever a person is a good listener, he or she will have that effective communication will be received from that sender. And a speaking skill is next required. It is 30%. And it will be whenever a speaker is efficient, the 30% of the communication will be transferred. And then this listening and speaking is combined. The speaker, the sender is a speaker and the listener is an receiver. So when a sender is efficient, 30% of the communication is being transferred. And if a listener is more efficient, then 45% of the communication will be effectively transmitted. And then the next part is reading and writing. So reading is where a writer wants to tell some message through a book or a magazine or a newspaper to the readers. So if a writer is 9% efficient, then the reader will be 8. If the reader is efficient, 16% of the communication will be transferred effectively. So in listening and speaking, listening is decoding. So the receiver is a listener, so their decoding process happens. And then speaking, so see in this diagram, it has been given. So ability to decode. So when a listener will be able to decode and then speaker will be able to encode. And in reading and writing, so writing is a person who sends the message. So they will be able to encode the message. And then the reading is where the person who receives a message, so they will be able to decode. So just understand this. And then next slide, sir. So characteristics of communication. So as we have seen before, all those 7 C's and 4 S's are the characteristics of an effective communication. So for effective communication, the clarity is very, very important. So it should be very clear. So then only the message will be effective. And completeness. As I said before, anything when we are communicating, the full information should be conveyed. Then only it will be an effective communication, and it should be concise. So concise is the very, very short form of a communication. So again, when information is being transferred in a very short form, it will be more effective and courteous and polite. So a communication, when a sender or a receiver, they communicate, that must be a politeful communication, and it must be a correctness. Correctness in the sense, again, the audience, correct message to correct audience should be delivered. Then only the communication will be more effective. So far we have seen what is communication, elements of communication, 7 C's and 7 C's and 4 S's of communication, and then characteristics. This is one part of the initial part of communication. So we'll check your understanding. So here is a question. The elements as related to communication in an ancient paradigm of everyday life are. So just first understand the question. Either it is physiological, economical, ethical, self-realization, or ego clashes. So here, one or more answers can be right. So just first understand the question. Can you able to understand this question? Or should I have to explain this question? Option 3. Is it option 3, 2? Can you understand this question first? Okay, let me explain this question. Option 1, yes, Naveen Kumar, it's right. And okay, I will explain you this question. So elements as related to a communication. It is what the main question area, and in an ancient paradigm. Paradigm means it is set of ideas. It is based on the ancient ideas. So they are asking which are the elements related to an communication depending on the ancient ideas. They are asking you question. So here physiological. So can tell me what someone can you tell me what is physiological? So do you know this term physiology?
Physical features.
Yeah, physical movement.
Action.
Action words. Yeah, okay. So yeah,
Morphological.
yeah, it is physical action or the movement of done by a body. And here
Body movements.
body movements. Okay, here think will physical movement will come under communication? Yes, it will come. So when a person in an ancient time, sometimes the language will not be known by everybody, right? So they would have done actions and made an symbols, actions that could have been done by the ancient people. So that is relevant to communication. And economic. So their trade had been happened. So it is the communication had been done based on the economic aspect, and ethical, which is wrong and right. So people would have also communicated through that. And self-realization. People would have made them self-realized and communicated. So ego clashes. So no ego clashes will come under a communication. Ego clashes is fight, something which is inside a person. So it will not be communicated in a message. So people will not tell to others that I have an ego clash with somebody. So we'll not show it in the communication, right? So the answer is option A. A, B, C, and D is the correct answer. Yes, sir. Next slide. So are you clear? Should I explain? Yeah, okay. The next question, the sender's responsibility in communication process includes. So what is the responsibility of a sender? So interrupting the receiver to clarify the misunderstanding immediately, ensuring the message. Yeah, it's 2. So here, yes. So as yeah, very good. You're all have understood this topic, and very good, right? Yes. So sometimes people could confuse with the option 1. So clarifying the misunderstanding immediately. So this is the next action of the sender. So the primary action is checking whether it is clear, complete, and understood by the receiver. Yes, you're correct. And next slide, sir. Okay, so far we have seen what are the communication and characteristics and elements of communication. Now we'll see the next part of communication. It is the verbal communication. So anything which is exchanging a exchange of message through an oral or written words. And whenever a language or a word is used, it is called as verbal communication. So often verbal is segregated as oral and written. So written in the sense it is always official. So it can be documented, and then it is always uncorrectable. Whenever an written statement is given, that information cannot be changed. It is unchangeable. So and then oral in a sense it is impersonal. So it could be personal or it is unofficial and informal. So whenever a person talks, any two person whoever communicates, it could not be documented. So it is undocumented and it can be changed. So spoken words can be changed, right? So oral communication can be changed. And then verbal communication, whenever a word or a language is used, it is called as an a verbal communication. And use of words is delivered in the intended message, segregated as written and oral. That's all. So the next one, sir. So here, non-verbal communication. So here it is very, very important. So just see what are all the aspects of non-verbal communication. It is very, very important. Question can be asked, and all these terms you must know. So with this terms, question can be asked. So be clear with that. So what are all the non-verbal communication? Anything other than using a language. It could be a symbol, any signs used to communicate, or a posture, a body language, eye contact. Even if you are blinking, it is a way of communication. It is a way of non-verbal communication. And then the blinking and tone of the voice. So tone of the voice is also a non-verbal communication. The facial expression, the smell, and the time. And then the personal presentation, your gesture, and the pitch of the voice and posture, everything comes under the non-verbal communication. So anything other than using a language or a word, it is called as non-verbal communication. So here paralanguage. So paralanguage lessons using an non-lexical communication. So can someone tell what is non-lexical? Do you have any idea what is non-lexical or paralanguages? So is it a new word? Yeah, okay. Then I will tell you. So non-lexical in a sense, a sound. So it is not a mere word. A sound is used instead of a word. So sometimes you'll tell, right? For instead of agreeing, you'll say, yeah, oh, all those things. Oh, all those words are called as non-lexical words. So instead of a word, just we are telling it in a sound like oh, in an excitement, oh, all those things are non-lexical communication. It is all called as para languages. Yeah, not involving words, but a sound which represents that word is called as para language. I hope you have understood this. And kinesthetics. So any type of body language. So it could be a facial expression, and gesture and eye movement. It could be even if you're blinking, it comes under the kinesthetics. So any kind of body movement, it is kinesthetics. And proximity. Proximity is an use of space of signals. So sometimes this traffic signal we are seeing, no? So the red indicates stop, and all those traffic signals comes under proximity. Haptics, it doesn't touch. So by communicating by the touch, so the blind peoples are they will communicate with the touch, right? So they will have this braille to read. So that is communication by touching. So that is haptics. And chronemics use of time, awaiting and passing. So in between a communication, whenever a person gives a pass, so that is also a way of communication. That is also a way of non-verbal communication. And olfactics, it is smell. So communicating through smell. So whenever you cross in coffee shop or in hotels or restaurants, you'll get the smell. So that is also a way of non-verbal communication. And vocalist. So the tone of the voice, the timbre, volume, even the speed, it comes under the vocalist. And as we've seen, this silence, giving a space in between a communication, giving time for people to think in between a communication. All these things comes under non-verbal communication. Please be clear about these words. And difference between verbal and non-verbal communication. So verbal, as I've said, we use words. And in non-verbal communication, it is the body gesture and the languages and all those things. So here in verbal communication, we have a language, words. Here again, we'll have this body language, paralanguage, paralinguistic features are being used. And the channels here, how verbal communication is being communicated, it is through spoken and written. And here, the channel for non-verbal communication is expressions, body languages, as you have seen before. All those things are the channels. And the advantages of verbal communication. So here it is always clear. Whenever a message is said, it can be delivered very fast. Orally and written, it could be very fast. And the correctness, chances of correcting a message. So here we can't correct your message in a written form. Oral form, we can correct our message, messages. And then it is very conscious and reasoned. And it improves the attention. Whenever than and sign language or non-verbal communication, the attention of the people or the receiver is here more, it is more important. And in a non-verbal communication, so the emotions has been mostly conveyed. So than the message, the emotion and feelings of the sender is conveyed. And here it is better. Here in between the communication, there is a better understanding between the sender and the receiver. So this is the difference between the verbal and non-verbal communication. Just have an idea about it. And next slide, sir. So formal and informal. As I said before, written is formal and oral communication is informal communication. So formal is always an authoritarian. Informal is democratic and freedom. So it is as what we use. It is user-friendly likewise. So it is friendly communication. And then there informal, we'll have certain rules and regulations to follow in a communication. So in an officially, in an organization or institution, there for communication, so they will have certain rules and regulations, and that will be maintained very secretly. So here in informal communications, there is no rules and regulation, and it is a very, very open talk. So it could be in public communication. So it can be transmitted, and then so there is no chance of distortion of message. So message is never distorted. So whenever it is said in a written format, it is officially when it is done, you cannot spoil the message or any interruption cannot be done in a message. But in an informal message, that message can be interpreted. It could be changed and anything can happen in that message. So formally, formal message, it is very disciplined. It is very expensive. It is time consuming. And then it is less flexible. So any formal message, it will be time consuming, it will be costly, and it is less flexible. So it is in an informal, it is always an less expensive one. So there is no discipline. So since there is no rules and regulation, it will not be disciplined. It will not, it is less expensive. And there is, for oral communication, the time required is very, very less. And then it is more flexible. So whatever, however we wish, we can communicate in that way. And then permanent documentation. So here, an formal message, it is always documented. It is an official record maintained, and in informal there is no official record or no documentation happens. And then the information flow. So this can be upward and downward. This we'll see in the further slides. So this information can be upward and downward. So there that no restriction. So in an office, in an institution and organization, either it could be an information can be transferred from the superior to the subordinate or subordinate to the superior. That is the flow of the message. And in an informal message, there is no flow. So it is very free. People are free to convey their messages. And these are all the differences between formal and informal. Formal, it is always official. It is always restricted. There is rules and regulation. And informal sense, it is nothing. There is no discipline, no rules and regulation. People are free and it is user friendly. Likewise, communication is called as informal communication. And then so far we have seen what is verbal, non-verbal, and formal and informal communication. So we'll check this with this question. So which of the following signifies a non-verbal communication essential way? So first understand the question, and then instructions written on a question paper, learner attending an online class, the dress code followed by an individual, yoga instructor teaching yoga poses to the pupil. So here they are asking which indicates the non-verbal communication. Is it B? So please give me as 1, 2, 3 the option. Option 4, option 3, 4, 3 and 4. 1, 4, 1. Why do you tell 1, 4, 3, 1? Yeah, okay. Let me tell you. So I think you are not clear, I think. So see here, which is the non-verbal communication taking place. So instructions written on a question paper. When it is been written, it is always a verbal communication. So oral and written, it comes under a verbal communication, right? So it is not a non-verbal communication. So it is a wrong option. And then learner attending an online class. Attending an online class in a sense, there is an oral conversation occurs. Yeah, it's option 3. You have understood. Yeah, it's correct. So their oral conversation occurs. And then in the fourth option, yoga instructor teaching yoga poses. So teaching in a sense, again, the oral conversation happens. So the dress code followed by an individual is a non-verbal communication taking place. So just question may be simple, but please understand and answer the question. So the answer is 3. I hope you have understood this. If you're not clear, just ask me. Yes, next question, sir. So here again, an attitudes, actions, and appearance in the context of a classroom communication is considered as it could be any communication. So the attitude, action, and appearance. What is it? Yeah, 2. Yeah, it is correct. It is a non-verbal communication. So through the attitude, action, and appearance, what we convey is it a non-verbal communication. Yeah, very good. Yes, sir. So far we have seen one half of the unit, and then the other half comes as levels of communication. So we are having 5 levels. So it could be types of non-verbal communication also. So here it is intra, inter, group communication, public, and mass communication. So with this picture itself, you will have a clear understanding. Just understand these topics. So here it is intrapersonal. So whenever a person, this girl is speaking with herself. So whenever a person communicates with themselves, with oneself, is called as intra. It is intra. Don't confuse with inter and intra. It is intra. In essence, people communicating with themselves, own. That is called as intra. And then whenever a person communicates with 2 or more, 3 people, it is called as inter. Between 2 people, that is called as inter. And then whenever a communication occurs more than 3 and more than 3, it is called as a group communication. And then there comes a public and mass communication. Please be aware about public and mass communication. Please don't confuse. So public in essence, the audience will be selective. We can segregate the audience. In mass media, we can't segregate the audience. So in mass media, the audience will be more wider, larger audience will be present. But in public communication, so the audience can be segregated. So this we'll see in the further slide. So next slide, sir. Personal communication. So as we have seen before, it is communicating with oneself. So this communication, it happens within a person whenever a person wants to take a decision. So whenever a person makes decision about their own action, reflecting their action and making a decision, or introspecting themselves and analyzing the situation and making oneself comfortable with that situation. So whenever a person thinks about themselves and either thinking, whenever a person is alone or thinking about the actions what they are required to do in further, all those things whenever they are thinking, or even meditation and dream, it comes under intrapersonal communication. So if you're dreaming, that is also something your mind is under a process, right? Only within you it happens. So that is also called as intrapersonal communication. And then next slide, sir. Inter, again, it is communication happens between two people. So this communication, so it could be a communication with it can occur at any level. It could be communication between two subordinates, or a subordinate and a superior, or it could be communication between the peer. So any two person whoever communicates is called as interpersonal communication. And this can be planned or unplanned. So it can happen randomly or even planned communication. So interviews, it is a planned communication. So whenever a person is called for an interview, the expert asks question towards the interview. So that type of communication, it is called as interpersonal communication. And this is effective only when there is an understanding between these two people. So if they are having a better understanding, if they are able to understand the message, proper message, what they are articulating, then interpersonal communication will be effective. So, and the next slide is difference between interpersonal and intrapersonal. Intra, in essence, within oneself, and inter is within two people. So, interpersonal, it is an relationship between two person. So, it is inter, between two person, between persons, and then inter, in essence, it is occurring within individual's mind or self. That is intra. And then inter, it is between two parties or which is involved in communication. And in intrapersonal communication, there is no external parties. Only one person, that is the self person, is the party, and there is no external party. And then, so for an interpersonal communication, there are various reasons to communicate. As I've said before, it could be an colleague speaking together or an interview happening. It could be many reasons, but for an intrapersonal communication, there is only two reasons, or it could be a very few reasons that depends upon the self. So whenever he or she feels lonely, they will have an mental processing about themselves, or and whenever they are having a difficult time, they will have a time and they will think about themselves what to do. So all those things can be a few reasons for intrapersonal communication. And here the feedback in interpersonal communication, there is always a feedback. Whenever two people communicate, there will be feedback. In intrapersonal, there is no feedback. Only the self realization occurs. There is no feedback. So this is the difference between intra and inter. Please be clear with that. And then group communication. So any communication that occurs more than two, that is more than two. If three or more people, they communicate, it is called as group communication. So this group communication can be official, that is formal or informal. So for example, take a cricket team or a football team. So this is a group of people joining together, and this will be effective only when and certain objective is being present. For a cricket team, what is the objective? To win the IPL match. So likewise will be their objective. So they will discuss and they will execute their outcome. They will that will be finalized with their outcomes, right? They will give all their efforts. So this kind of communication, it could be a cricket team or even a group projects in schools. So when a team is being created and when a project is being assigned, those peoples, they will have an motive to do their objective is to do that project, and they will discuss what to be done in that project, and their outcome is the project. So they will accomplish and they will submit their project. That is their outcome. So if all these things are happening properly, then the communication, group communication will be effective. So for example, company parties and the group project discussions or team building events, or all these comes under a group communication. And then the next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. So public communication. So here, just be aware the difference between public and mass communication. It is the message to one selective audience. So this public communication, it is given to some specific audience. And then, for example, take this seminars conducted in the colleges and universities. So if a seminar is being conducted in science major or science departments, students of science department can be present inside that seminar. So the irrelevant arts and science arts students cannot be present, and it will be irrelevant for them, right? So if an seminar happens in chemistry, people of maths and physics or biology can be present, so something they can relate. So likewise, when the audience is being segregated, that will come under public communication. So, and it could be a formal or informal communication. And here again, they will have certain objective and the discussion occurs, and the outcome is the finalized product of this public communication. So, for example, a seminar, the press conference, the political campaigns, and the public speaking events. So, in all these things, the purpose is to make the outcome or the objective to be successful, and their audience are always specific. Audience are larger, but still they are specific. So that is public communication. And then the next slide, sir. So mass communication. So mass communication, it is a specific topic, and here we'll see just a glimpse of it. And so here it is addressed about the larger audience. So mass communication doesn't see the examples. It is the radio, social media, advertising, journalism, newspaper, television, film, print media, books, and magazines. It could be anything that is under social media. So if you see, if a radio is broadcasted, a person is a sender who speaks, an RJ who speaks in a radio is on one sender, but the person who are, we can't limit the person who is the receiver. We can't limit them. So whoever are having this FM connection, they will listen. So it is a larger audience. We can't limit them. We can't segregate them. So that kind of audience who all receive all these things. So if you're making an advertisement board and placing it in road, so we can't limit. So certain people should see. It is not like that. So people, whoever passes through, they can see. So it is an audience, larger audience. And anyone can be an audience in mass media. So that is what here it is told. And it is no personal connect. So in public communication even, there will be in some connect. So people of a particular area will be there, and there will be in face-to-face contact. So likewise, there will be some personal contact in a sense. All of them will belong to some particular criteria. So that will be the contact. Here, there is no connect between them. So anyone, a random person can be the audience. So that is what mass communication is. And then I hope we are clear about inter, group, public, and mass communication. And then now we'll see about the elements of personal communication. So we have seen about non-verbal and verbal communication. See the percentage. So whenever a communication happens, so people will notice only just 7% about the spoken words. If a stage, if a speech is being given by a leader or a faculty in a stage, only just 7 words are being observed or attracted by the receivers, listeners. And see, 38% is given to the voice and the tone. So people are attracted, or people will listen or remember this tone based on their tone is 38%. And see, the major thing is 55% based on their body language, the way you stand, the way you express, the facial expression. It is the predominant way people is being taking use of that for their effective communication. So 38 and 55%, it is the non-verbal communication. So here the voice, tone, and the body language, it comes under non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication is more effective than verbal communication, the spoken words. So please remember this. And intercultural. So as we have seen before, it is between two people, and culture is the lifestyle or the thing, the practices what we do in our daily life is the culture. So a communication between two persons of different culture is called as intercultural communication. So this communication, it could be symbolic, it is it can be transactional, it can be contextual process. So this creates and shared meaning. So in universities or MITs, NITs, and all VITs, all these things. So people of different culture come together and live together, so that we celebrate all the festivals of the people who are present here. So we'll celebrate all the festival. We will not celebrate particular Diwali or Christmas. We'll not celebrate some particular functions. So we'll celebrate Onam, and all those things is being celebrated in an institution and organization. So that tells us the how interculturally related we are. So that is what intercultural communication is. And then next slide, sir. So classroom communication. So I hope people are very, very clear about this topic. So as all of us have come across this classroom communication, it is social identity. It is it is a basic of social identity. So a communication would happen between a teacher and a student in order to learn. It is called as a classroom communication. And then, so this communication, it is happening directly. So a face-to-face communication occurs, and this communication will be giving you an immediate feedback. So people will tell you either, so now I'm asking you, right? Can you understand this or not? So if you're having some doubts, you'll ask me. So we'll get an immediate response, immediate feedback from that communication. So teacher will inculcate the proper values, such as, so in a classroom, it is always a role of a teacher to inculcate the values to the students. So he or she will teach the values in all aspects. So few are listed here. It could be economic, social, and cultural. And classroom communication, it is always a two-way communication. So here feedback is always given. So teacher always provide you values, and they will always motivate you. And there will be an trust happening in between these student and a teacher. So a classroom communication, it is very, very effective when there is a proper understanding between a teacher and a student. So a teacher should always be empathetic. So teacher should not be sympathetic. He or she should be an empathetic person. And then so far we have seen about this levels of different types of communication. So all these things you have come across. And now we'll see some of the questions. And next slide, sir. We'll see some of the questions. So which one of the following are the criteria for public communication? A personal bias, ideological slant, accuracy, comprehensiveness, separation of opinion and facts. So tell me, what is the criteria for public communication? Just think. So think about the characteristics of communication. So it is applicable for every communication. Option C. Yeah. 3. Yeah, okay. You have understood 2. Why 2? Shamla, why 2? Ideological slant. So person's ideology should not affect a public communication. So a public communication is spoken by it is taken in an organization, right? So when it happens with a specific selective audience, we cannot put our ideology in that communication. Okay, 3. Yeah, you have understood. Very good. And then next slide, sir. So here accuracy and comprehensiveness and the separation between the opinion and fact should be done for an effective public communication. And here another question from the communication viewpoint, which one of the following is a cultural institution? So is it 3 military alliance, 4 1 trade organization, 4 So yeah, you're all correct. It is 4, option 4, family. So a basic if a baby is being born, and he or she, the little one, will learn the culture initially from the family. So the baby will imitate the parents first and their siblings, and it will learn from their family, right? So trade and organization, political parties, military alliance, all these things are the next level of communication. So from that, the culture will not be developed. So basically from a family, So we'll first imitate our parents. So from there only the culture will be transmitted. So culture will be communicated. So family is the proper answer. So some of you have said the correct answer. You have understood it. Very good. And then the other areas of communication. So it could be horizontal, vertical. So in vertical, these are all the organizational communications. And here, vertical in a sense, it could happen in two ways. It could be downward and upward communication and diagonal communication. Let's see one by one. And next slide, sir. So horizontal communication. So here horizontal in a sense, exchanging information between and the subordinates. Suppose in an organization, we'll have different hierarchy of people, right? The superiors, subordinates, and levels of subordinates will be there. So whenever a communication happens at the same level of the people, for example, think a principal or an vice chancellor, and then head of the departments, and then the faculty, and then the students. This will be the hierarchy in an university. So when there is some discussion among the head of the departments, so when there is a communication among the head of the departments, then that kind of communication is horizontal. It happens among the same level of people. So that is called horizontal. And then so this kind of communication, it will be efficient for an institution or an organization to run successfully. For their efficiency, this kind of communication, it will help. So in an institution, if the same level of people, if they discuss and if they plan for the improvement of the organization, so when the same level of people discuss, same level of people, that is when an as I've said before, as an example, suppose if heads of the department, if they discuss, so they will know the merits and demerits of their department, and there they will implement new ideas for the universities, or they will suggest some new ideas for the upgrade of the university. So likewise, it will make the institution run effectively if the horizontal communication occurs. So remember, it is at the same level of an organization chart. So that kind of communication is called as horizontal, same level of people. And then next slide, sir. So vertical in a sense, it follows the hierarchy. So here hierarchy in a sense, this superiors, subordinates, and the levels of subordinates will be present. So whenever an superior, if they communicate to the subordinate, it is called as one type of top to bottom communication. And then in an other way, when an subordinate, they communicate to an superior, it is called as bottom to top communication. This is vertical communication. And here, so next slide, sir. So vertical, it is of two types, upward and downward communication. So see this, when a superior, he or she communicates to one subordinates. So the hierarchy comes from top to bottom. It is downward. So it is downward communication. So here, what kind of communication they will, it will take place in a sense. So the policies, if a policy can be planned, some rules can be implemented, some procedures, what the subordinates have to follow. The administrators, the superiors, they will instruct this to the subordinates. So that kind of information, whenever it is happening, so remember what kind of information is being transferred from superior to subordinate. Some questions can be asked here. So whenever a policies, rules and procedures are being framed, it could be from a downward communication. So superior will tell the rules and regulation what a subordinate should follow. It is downward, remember this. And then upward communication. In upward communication, so subordinates will communicate to their superiors. So in this form, so subordinates will tell their own grievances or the performance report of the subordinates, and some other informations, what could be done to the institution, that could be suggested by the subordinates. So that suggestions can be given by the subordinates to the superiors. That the level goes from the lower hierarchy to the higher hierarchy. So that is subordinates to superiors. That is upward communication. So see the direction where it goes. If it comes from top to bottom, so it is towards downward. So it is downward communication. And when the hierarchy, it goes from bottom to top, that is, it goes towards upward. So it is upward communication. So whenever a request is given, it is upward communication. Whenever some orders, rules and regulations is given, it is downward communication. Remember this, don't confuse. And then the next slide, sir. So diagonal. So as we have seen, when a communication happens at same level, it is horizontal. In a hierarchy, whenever it goes from in a hierarchy, it is vertical. Whenever it happens in different levels, it is called as diagonal. So superior can directly talk to one lowest subordinate. So that kind of random communication is called as diagonal communication. So it is a mixture of vertical and horizontal communication. So a combined communication. So it is both vertical and horizontal. So when a communication occurs at this point, it is called as diagonal communication. And then the next slide, sir. So here we'll see a question. So we have seen what is horizontal, vertical, and diagonal communication. So imagine you are working in an educational institution where people are of equal status. So which method of communication is best suited and normally employed in such a context? So it is yeah, you are correct. So here the people are of same status. So then it is horizontal communication. Yeah, very good. You have understood this concept. Yeah, thank you. It's very good. And the next slide, sir. It is horizontal. And then the organizational communication can also be equated with an organizational communication. An organizational communication.
Group communication.
Yeah, it is group communication. Yes, you're correct. Yeah, when an organization, it is a group communication. It is correct. In the next slide, sir. And then the next half of the topic, it is effective communication. As we have seen, what all the things is required for an effective communication, all those 7 C's and 4 S's. And here a definition has been given. So a procedure, a process of exchanging ideas, thoughts, knowledge, information, such as that a purpose or the intention is fulfilled in the best possible manner. So whenever a communication occurs, the information which is being shared, if the purpose of the communication, if it has been fulfilled, then the communication is effective. So for now, I'm communicating here, and if you people understand the concept, it is a successful communication. It is an effective communication. So that is what effective communication is. It is nothing but the presentation of the view by the sender and in the best way, and the way best understood by the receiver. If the receiver understands it very in a better manner or the best manner, and the purpose, if it is being satisfied, then the communication is effective communication. So if you people understand this unit communication, and this 1 hour or 1.5 hour session will be an effective communication. So that is the example. And then the next slide, sir. So here barriers. So we have seen what are all the requirements for the effective communication. So now what are the barriers is, we are having 7 barriers. It is linguistic, it is cultural, it is psychological, it is physical barrier, it is emotional barrier, organizational and interpersonal barriers. So 7 barriers are present here. And remember what are all the barriers? And linguistic barrier. So linguistic in a sense, as we have seen before, the semantic, right? All these things comes under here. And if a person, if they are having a language, if a person does not know a language, then it will be a barrier. So language is a tool for communication, right? So if I'm now I'm communicating in English, if some of you do not know English, then it is a barrier for a effective communication. So as we have seen before, if we use a difficult vocabulary or a technical term to an untechnical person, so then the words could not be understood by that person. So again, that becomes a barrier. That language becomes a barrier for this effective communication. So since we are living in a diverse country, India is a diverse country. So for every few kilometers, we'll have different language entirely, but for few kilometers you will have different slangs of language. Local language has been present. So if we use those types of words for a communication in an official manner, again there it will be a barrier for an effective communication. So I hope you're understanding. Any language which the other person could not understand, if the receiver or a sender, if they do not know that language, then that is a barrier, or linguistic barrier. It could be semantic barrier or linguistic barrier, both are same. So if the technical terms are in hard terms, it is ambiguity of words or multi-meaning words if they are used, then the context of the sender, it will not be understood by the receiver. So this is linguistic barrier. And the next word, cultural. Next slide, sir. Cultural barrier. So culture, as we have seen before, we are living in an diverse culture place also. So each culture, they will have set of values and attributes, and that will be different. So the way of living, it can be built by a group, and that has been transmitted from generation to generation. So that culture, so each values and their way of lifestyle, and that will be a barrier. So in cultural, individuals manner of talking, behaving, thinking, and the communication style, and then competency, everything is everything will be different. So there people will feel difficult. So because people are of different culture, so they will take time, or it will take some time for them to understand the people of different culture and the way and the lifestyle, and then the behavior. So that will also be a barrier for effective communication. Only it will take some time. After that, the communication can be effective, but initially it will be a barrier. And then next slide, sir. Psychological barrier. So as I have said in the noise, psychological. So psychological, if some person, the way of style of speaking. So the if we see the British people, so their fluency or their pronunciation, everything will be different from us. So that style of language, no, that can be a barrier. So the style, that could be a barrier. And then the status relationship, their poor attention and retention. So if a receiver is not willing to receive something, so if they do not like what the sender tells, so that could be a barrier. So if they are not having any interest, so that could be a barrier. And if somebody is physically present and mentally not present, so the closed minded. So if some person is absence of minded, or if somebody has a health issue, so they if they have that interest even, so their health will not cooperate. So that kind of things will be an psychological barrier. So all these things will affect the message, receiving of messages, so that the effective communication can be affected. And then the physical barrier. So see, any noise, if now we are taking a class, if someone is shouting from the other side, so it will be a noise for us. So it will be a physical barrier. So we cannot communicate properly. And then a car noise, or an poor lighting, and then frequent movement of body posture. So even in a stage communication, if the person, if he or she is having in frequent different postures, then that even it will make the people affect with their communication. And then the noise or the environment, and even an arrival of coffee at critical situation. So when somebody is critically speaking, at that time, if somebody interrupts, if somebody brings something, that can be even a physical barrier. So imagine in an communication, people is using a mic and communicating. If the power is being cut, if there is a short circuit, and all those things will be a physical barrier, and the communication can be affected. So all these things are physical barrier. And now this network what we are using, no, if there is also a problem, that is physical communication, so physical barrier. And emotional. So whenever a person is emotionally mature, then the communication will be effective. And if the communication, if a person is at low emotion or an good emotion, then that will affect the way how, or way how they receive a message or how they send a message. So emotional peoples will affect the way of communication, and it will affect the decision making capacity of a person. Since if they are very low or very high, the anger, frustration, this all these things will affect the communication effectiveness. And then the next slide, sir. Next, organizational barriers. So for every organization, they will have their own set of rules, climate, culture, and regulations, and that can affect. So a person who is unaware of that, and that will affect. So certain rules and regulation will not be applicable for everybody. Somebody will not like that. So that can be a barrier. And the lack of cooperation between superiors and subordinates. If somebody is not having a good cooperation between them, if a superior and subordinate is not having good cooperation, then that will affect their communication in an organization. And interpersonal. So interperson here, between any problem between two people, it will affect the communication. So if somebody is having preconceived thought about the others, or they do not have any cooperation, if the trust has been broken, or if there is any problem in their relationship, then there could be an interpersonal barrier. So I hope you have all seen about this 7 barriers. We'll have a question now. So which of the following is excluded from the list of communication barriers? So we have seen 7, which is not in that 7. So tell me which is physical, semantic. Yeah, it is philosophical. Yes, very good.
Philosophical.
Philosophical. Yes, very good. And the next slide, sir. Semantic. Semantic is also known as linguistic communication. Semantic. It is not 2, it is 3. It is philosophical. And then mass media. So as we have seen before, it has a very larger audience. So it cannot be, the audience cannot be differentiated. They are undifferentiated audience. And the message can, and whenever a mass media communication is been transmitted, that message can be reproduced. And it can be reproduced, and it can be spread very rapidly, and the cost of communication will be cost of transmitting the message will be very low. And then the next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. Characteristics of mass communication. So as we have seen before, it is a direct message towards a larger people, that is heterogeneous crowd, and the audience will be heterogeneous. And this message has been transmitted in a public, so there is no privacy in this mass media, and the duration is very, very short, and the feedback. So here it is one-way process. There is no feedback. So if suppose there is a feedback, it will be very, very feeble amount. It can be delayed, and the cost of this communication, it is always very low. So since with the low cost, it has been delivered to a vaster audience, so it is very low. And any information which has been transmitted by an organization, it is belonging to that organization. So whenever an television telecasts something, that television will be responsible, or a news channel which telecasts some news, they will be responsible for that authenticity of that information. And then the next slide, sir. Functions. So since mass media, it is the largest media, so they have more responsibility in fostering the democratic plurality and communal harmony. So they must have that role, play that role, responsive role in spreading all these things. So the information, it should be combined with the education, and that should be transmitted. And the socialization among the people in the society, that should be ensured. And the education with the entertainment as edutainment, that can be transmitted through their messages. And the political awareness should be created. The cultural transmissions, as culture, we have a diverse culture in India, so the culture can be transmitted. And then the catalyst to development, since the society need to develop, so this mass media can be utilized for this societal development. And then next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. And difference between mass media and previous one, and the mass media and social media. So mass media are those technologies, radio, television, advertising, all those things are the older technology, and social media is the present technology, as all this communicating device like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Insta, all these things are social media. And the mass media is something which is little older, like a radio, television, advertising, magazines, books. All these things are mass media. So the difference between them is the technology, what they use. And here the audience in mass media, they are passive. So there is no communication, no feedback. So only the sender transmits their message. And in social media, the audience is the center. So in any social media, the audience will give their comment, they'll give their feedback immediately. So that is what the difference between mass media and the social media. The next slide, sir. So here we are having types of communication models. We are having 3 models. It is linear model of communication, interaction model, and transactional model. So question can be asked in this model. So please be aware. The next slide, sir. So linear model. So linear model is nothing but here a transaction of information, it happens in one direction, where a sender sends or transmits the message to the receiver. This alone it happens. There is no feedback from the receiver. So when a feedback is not obtained, it is called as a linear model of communication. So for example, the radio broadcasting, this RJ, they will give some informations or telecast the music and news programs. Just the receiver of the large crowd, they will just receive. They will not give any feedback, or they will not react anything to that communication. So such type of communication is called as linear model of communication. And then the next slide, sir. Here interaction in the sense there is an two-way process. The feedback is obtained, there is a feedback. So in the previous linear, that it is a one-way process, no feedback is obtained. In linear model, we'll get the feedback. So a sender sends a message, exchanges their ideas or messages, and that has been received by the receiver, and the receiver gives an feedback. And this kind of feedback, it will not be immediate. So for example, email, if I'm sending a question or something, an information to you people, if I'm giving you an information and some people will respond, thank you. So that kind of response will be not immediate, but there will be a response. So that kind of interaction is called as interactive model. So here we'll get the feedback. So that is called as interactive model. And then the next slide, sir. So transactional model. So transactional model is where a face-to-face communication happens. Here, it is of next level of interactive model. So here, the sender sends the message and the receiver sends back the message. Here, it is about the conversation. It happens. People will continue the conversation about particular topic. So they will. The people shares the understanding as built through the consistent communication within the specific context. So they will build their communication and base at the particular specific topic, and this consistent communication, it will happen. So for example, this face-to-face communication, so this facial expressions clue, it will make the sender and the receiver even more closer and effective communication happens in this transactional model. So here the sender receiver both are active. The conversation is prolonged. So this communication becomes as a conversation. So both will transmit their informations. That kind of transaction happening is called as transaction model. And then the next slide. So far we have seen, so next slide, sir. So far we have seen the three models of communication. So linear, and then we have seen the models transactional, linear, and interactive model. So with this, the communication unit have been completed. Sir, can you share the slides, sir? We have only 5 questions. We'll ask and we'll end the session. Yeah, it's okay, sir. And then this is all about, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, let me even share you all those 5 questions alone. Well, sir, let me share, sir. Just 5 questions. Yeah. Okay, okay, sir. Just 5 more questions. Yes, sir. Yeah, okay. So see these questions. So when verbal and non-verbal messages are contradictory, it is said that the most people believe in So as I've mentioned this in the message, yeah, 3, you are correct. So people, they believe in this. Yeah, yes, sir. So share this previous slide, sir. I would like to tell that. Yeah, it's option 3. It is non-verbal messages. People are being mostly believe in this non-verbal communication. And then the next slide, sir. So the assertion and reasoning. So the initial message to students in a classroom by a teacher need not be critical to establish an interaction later. And more control over the communication process means more control over what the students are learning. So just understand this. So initial messages to a students in a classroom by a teacher need not be critical to establish an interaction later. And the reason for that is more control over the communication process means more control over what the students are learning. So which one is true and false? Is it A, both are true? And is it the relevant answer? Is it one? Yeah, okay. So the answer is option 3. A is correct and R is wrong. So there need not be a critical. So the initial message, it need not be that critical for establishing the interaction later. So it need not be that effective. So it need not be that critical. For initial message need not be that critical. So here, and more control over communication process means more control over the student. So we'll not tell that if a control process is more, if it is more control in the sense, it does not mean that we'll have the control over the students learning. So students learning, it depends upon that student, right? So he or she will just nod their head, or they'll just daydream, and all those things will not tell that we'll have control over their learning. Communication can be under control. That does not mean that we'll have control over their learning. So, for building an interaction in the later part of the class, initial message need not be that critical. So, it can be a normal message. So, option A is true, and but R is false. Option 3. And then aspects of voice other than the speeches are known as aspects of voice other than the speech. Speech doesn't words are known as. Yeah, it's 3 paralanguage. So it is the aspects of voice, the tone. Yeah, it's correct. Option 3 paralanguage. And then the synchronous, this topic I have not covered. Just I will tell you this synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. So the slide have been skipped. So synchronous in a sense, people communicate or at a time. Now we are at synchronous. So people so when a people or the participants are all present at a particular time, if they are interacting at a particular time, that is called as synchronous. Asynchronous is people they randomly whenever they get the time they communicate, they interact. It's called asynchronous. So yeah, you're all right. It is A. It is a video call, video chat, and then virtual classroom and audio conference. In all these things, the people will be present at that time and they will interact. So their communication happens at same time is called as synchronous. If, for example, email communication, but it is not at the same time, so that is called as asynchronous. Okay, I hope you have understood this. Here, the correct answer is video chat, virtual classrooms, and audio conferences, where people communicate at the time. And the same time is called as synchronous. And then the next slide, sir. Excuse me, sir. Sir, can you hear me, sir? It is not three, it is one A, B, C only. Both video conference, video chat, virtual classroom, and audio conference. All those A, B, C. It is option one. Correct. Can you understand the synchronous communication? Synchronous. Sir? Yahoo, sir. Can you hear me, sir? Yeah, I'll explain you once again. Synchronous in a sense, all the participants. So now what we are interacting now. So all of us, 54 of us are here. So we are all present in a medium at a time, in at the same time. So we are all present and we are communicating. So this kind of communication is called as synchronous communication. So this kind of Google Meet, Zoom, video chat, and this is audio conference, video conference, and this virtual classroom, all these things where the participants communicate at the same time. So in a classroom, people communicate on the same time. So likewise, communication is called as synchronous communication. They are all in a sync at the same time. It is another word opposite to this is asynchronous, which means people communicate whenever they get their time. So for example, it could be a message, email, all those things is asynchronous. Now I can send a mail and you people, whenever you are free or when you come across that mail, you will respond me. So that kind of response or communication is called as asynchronous. So if I am texting you now and some people will not see that, and when they are coming across that message, they will send me the response back. So that kind of communication taking at different times according to an individual at different time is called as asynchronous. Taking place at a time at the same time is called as synchronous. You are it clear? Yeah. Sir, excuse me, sir. Sir, not able to hear you, sir.
It's visible only.
It's visible, sir.
Third option, ma'am, public communication.
Visible, visible.
Yo, I'm not able to see you, sir.
Ma'am, now not it is not visible. Visible, sir. Visible, sir.
Yeah, okay, sir. We'll wind up here. That's all. It's only just a few questions. Yes, sir. I'll read it for you. Yeah, 1 minute. I'll take those questions. So I'll read it, sir. Can I read the question, sir? Yeah, announcement of the arrival and departure of a train in a railway station is, so whether it is in spatial communication, organizational communication, public communication, or sectional communication.
Public communication.
Railway station. What type of communication is it?
Public communication.
Is it organizational? Just think and answer. In a railway station, it is not one, it is not two, it is public communication. So whenever an communication happens in an institution, it is called organization. So here it is public. So the audience are the person who are only present in the railway station. So the audience are segregated. So this type of it is also a public. It is not a it is not based on some organization information. It is a general information, right? So it is public communication. So the announcement in a railway station is called as public communication. Can you understand? Should I explain again?
Hello, ma'am.
Sir? Yes?
Ma'am, can you explain the
okay.
first question once more
Which
about the
question?
verbal and non-verbal communication? There is a contradiction between verbal and non-verbal communication. That question.
Verbal and non-verbal.
Yes, ma'am.
So when a non-verbal and non-verbal is contradictory, it is said the most people believe in. Is that your question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That is the
Yeah.
question.
Here I have given you the options as interdeterminate, verbal message, non-verbal, and aggressive. So in the previous slide, I have mentioned that 55% is been attracted, the communication has been effective by the body language, and 38% it has been effective with their tone and voice, and only 7% it is with the words what we use in a communication, right? Did you see that slide?
Yes, ma'am. But my doubt is non-verbal communication is changeable, right? You said it so, right? Verbal communication, verbal
So
communication is
did I tell
changeable
you it is
and
verbal message? No, it
hello.
is non-verbal. So people
Yes.
mostly believe in non-verbal message. So I'm sorry, it is non-verbal. So now you're clear, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, clear.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I hope this session would have been effective and useful for you. And thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Hello. So it's nothing. So I'm going to give an official vote of thanks for Ajita. So Ajita, I was truly impressed by your outstanding performance. So definitely your insight
Thank
were
you, sir.
yeah. So definitely your insights were not only for